Uh-huh.
Many game companies have come and gone over the years, with many lasting legacies. Some of those companies are still around, but their legacy comes from their past. One of these companies is Rareware, more commonly known as just Rare. Originally known as Ultimate Play the Game, Rare has been making games for over 30 years. With many of their earlier hits being exclusively on Nintendo consoles, they have many games that are hard to find these days. Currently, they are owned by Microsoft and still continue to make games today. I guess. But today, we are going to focus on their best games, the cream of the crop. There aren't any rules for this list, so let's jump right in to the top 10 Rareware games. Number 10 goes to arguably the hardest game on this list, Battletoads. Released in 1991 for the NES, this game is well known for being unforgivingly difficult. It is a mix of beat 'em up and platforming for most levels, with the exception being the turbo tunnel segments. In Battletoads, you play as, you guessed it, the Battletoads. There are 3 of them: Rash, Zitz, and Pimple. I'm serious. Those are their names. Anyway, you play as Rash and Zitz, as Pimple has been kidnapped by the Dark Queen. One of the early female villains in the industry, the Dark Queen is well known for her ridiculous phrases and sex appeal. Seriously, look at this. This was early 90s, people. If you're more of a modern gamer, you'll be happy to know that this game is included with the Xbox One game, Rare Replay. Battletoads had many other games and spin-offs, but the original is the one I played the most. While difficult, this game was an absolute blast to play. It definitely earned its spot on this list. Another game included on Rare Replay, Force Gemini takes spot number 9. Unlike Battletoads, this game was originally released for the Nintendo 64 in 1999. This game was Rare's first and only third-person shooter. Taking place in a futuristic setting, Force Gemini makes you travel to many different planets and gives you control of 3 different characters. A word of warning though, this game is not easy. It's not the hardest game on the N64, but it'll make you earn your victory. The soundtrack in this game is solid. It was really well done, from the music to the sound effects. I do have 2 gripes about this game though. First, the controls aren't great, but then again, what do you expect from a controller built for people with 3 hands? My second gripe is the forced collection of every tribal in the game. The fact that tribals can be killed before you even get to them just means you have to unnecessarily replay levels. It would be different if you only had to get so many, but no, you have to get all of them. And there are almost 300 of these bear-looking things that you have to rescue. But that aside, this is one of the better games for the Nintendo 64. Number 8 goes to Killer Instinct. This is Rare's popular arcade fighting game, but before we go any further, I need to clarify something. There are like 50 different versions of this game. The version that I put on this list is the original arcade version, which was through coin-operated cabinets only. It came out in 1994 and was the first arcade game to use a hard drive along with the game's ROM. This gave the game vastly superior graphics for its time. It also has a really cool main theme. Now, there was a port of the game that was released for the Super Nintendo, but it was utterly inferior. Luckily, back in 2013, Microsoft released a digital port of the arcade version. Unfortunately, you can only get it as part of a bundle. Nevertheless, Killer Instinct was one of the best fighting games around in the 90s, and it is still a blast to play with friends today. Donkey Kong 64 takes the 7th spot, along with a significant portion of my childhood. There are 2 reasons it took so much of my childhood. The first reason is that it's a great game all around. The second reason is the ridiculous amount of collectibles that this game has. Seriously, there are almost 4,000 collectibles in this game. In fact, the game holds the Guinness World Record for the most collectibles in a platforming game. Originally titled Donkey Kong Country 64 during production, you are given control of 5 very distinct characters. With varying abilities, you must frequently switch characters to solve different puzzles. This game was one of the few that required the Nintendo 64 expansion pack. While several games were made better with it, this game, along with 2 others, required it to even function. Now you know I have to talk about the music. It was all composed by Grant Kirkhope, one of the greatest video game music composers ever. I could sit here and gush about it all for hours, but instead, I'll just play this.
Come on, Cranky, take it to the fridge. Walnuts, peanuts, pineapple smells, grapes, melons, oranges, and coconut shells. Oh yeah, walnuts, peanuts, pineapple smells, grapes, melons, oranges, and coconut shells.
I am the great mighty Pooh.
Undeniably the most mature game on this list, Conker's Bad Fur Day takes the 6th position. Conker is a platformer released in 2001 for the Nintendo 64. Similar to many of Rare's other platforming games, Conker actually tones it back a bit by making the control scheme very simple. Running, jumping, and smacking things with a frying pan is about the extent of your controls. But let's talk about what makes this game so well known. It's vulgar humor. This game is absolutely off the wall, with humor about drunkenness all the way to sex and money. For Rare, and Nintendo for that matter, this was not a common occurrence. The game also likes to break the fourth wall. A lot. As far as sales, the game actually didn't do that well. This was mainly due to the game releasing near the end of the Nintendo 64's life cycle, but the reviews were mostly positive. It just never got the momentum that it deserved. Luckily, a remake was released on the original Xbox a few years later, and the Nintendo 64 version was included in Rare Replay in 2015. While it is a game intended only for mature audiences, it is a hilarious adventure worth playing. Moving back to the Super Nintendo days again, we have Donkey Kong Country at number 5. Released in 1994, this game is considered by some to be one of the greatest platformers of all time. The game was revolutionary for its time, having incredible graphics and captivating music. Donkey Kong Country was the second best-selling game on the Super Nintendo, being surpassed only by Super Mario World. A testament to the times, this incredible game was created by a team of just 20 people. For Rare, 20 people was the most that they had ever assigned on a single project. It was around this time that Nintendo decided to make Rare a second-party developer. Definitely one of Nintendo's better choices, as Rare made them quite a lot of money. Anyway, Donkey Kong Country has 40 levels, with each having several collectibles. The game does have some difficult parts, but that makes beating each level feel so much more rewarding. The music in the game was mostly composed by David Wise, who would go on to compose music for some of Rare's other games. Many people grew up with this game, and a fine game to grow up with it was. Donkey Kong Country will forever be etched into the hearts of many gamers, as well as Nintendo's wallet. One of my favorite games from the beginning of the millennium, Perfect Dark earns its spot at number 4. This game is very similar to another of Rare's titles, Goldeneye 007. So similar, in fact, that Perfect Dark has been called the spiritual successor to Goldeneye. Using an upgraded version of Goldeneye's game engine, Perfect Dark made several improvements to the original formula. Being a first-person shooter, the game is centered around combat and completing mission objectives. Unlike Goldeneye, however, this game is set in a futuristic setting. This adds a nice change to the flow of the game and creates a very fun experience. Guess what we're going to talk about now? You guessed it, the music. Another score from Grant Kirkhope, Perfect Dark had some great music. But it was never the music that I remembered. Rather, it was the sound effects. Some of them came right out of Goldeneye. Here, I'll show you what I mean.
Intruder alert! All security to the vault!
Rare had the right idea with this game. If it works, do it. Goldeneye was an amazing game, so it only makes sense to basically make another. Overall, I think I still like Goldeneye more, which is why... Here is, hands down, my favorite first-person shooter of all time. Goldeneye 007 for the Nintendo 64 absolutely deserves spot number 3. As a child, I played this game non-stop. The game is level-based, with each level having several objectives to complete. An interesting thing to note here is that the difficulty that you play each level on can affect what objectives you have to complete. Harder difficulties tend to add extra objectives, usually being hard to complete. One of my favorite things about this game is how closely it follows the plot of the movie it is based on. There are some minor changes, but the overall plot is intact. Sadly, no ports or re-releases have ever been made. A couple remakes were attempted, but they all fell quite short. The music in this game was composed by a few different people, notably Graham Norgate and, of course, Grant Kirkhope. They made one heck of a soundtrack, implementing elements from the James Bond movies. This blend of game and movie created a music experience like no other. Goldeneye also has a split-screen multiplayer mode. It's simple, but incredibly fun. Some of the best nights of my life were spent playing this game with my friends. There is one big problem with Goldeneye though. It unfortunately did not age well. This is mainly due to the single-stick controls that the Nintendo 64 forced it to have. I still hope that one day we might see a remake worth playing. Until then, I'll still break out my original cartridge to relive one of the best shooters out there. My number 2 goes to my favorite racing game of them all, Diddy Kong Racing for the Nintendo 64. Rare released this game in November of 1997. This game is very close to my heart, as it was the very first video game I ever played. It's a kart racer similar to Mario Kart, but with some awesome differences. First of all, it isn't limited to land karts. Depending on the level, you may be racing in a car, a hovercraft, or even an airplane. One of the big reasons I like Diddy Kong Racing over Mario Kart is the single-player mode. There are 5 different hub worlds, each with 4 tracks, a boss, and a battle game. After clearing each track once and beating the boss, you have to race each track again. Only this time, there are 8 coins scattered across each track. Not only do you have to get all 8 coins, but you still have to come in first place. This not only adds diversity, but also gives a better difficulty curve. There are several characters to pick from, with slight differences in how they control. David Wise composed the wonderful soundtrack for this game, leaving many lasting memories. Diddy Kong Racing is a great racing game, and even though it is geared towards a younger audience, it is a blast for all ages. And here it is. Banjo Kazooie takes today's top spot. Okay, let's get the informative part out of the way so I can gush about one of my favorite games of all time. Banjo Kazooie was released in June of 1998 for the Nintendo 64. You play as a bear and a bird, fighting an evil witch to kidnap your sister. It's an action-adventure platformer where you collect items to progress through new levels. Okay, that's good. Holy crap, this game is awesome. Look at these gorgeous colors. Look at this perfect level design. Look at these tight controls. Look at these goofy characters. And most importantly, listen to one of the best game soundtracks that has ever existed. Okay, I feel better. Seriously though, what made this game for me was the music. To this day, I still know every track in that game. Grant Kirkhope, of course, made all the music, which is why he is one of my favorite composers out there. I could spend another hour telling you why this is the single best platform/collectathon game out there, but you should just go play it. It was included with Rare Replay, so you can get it on Xbox One. Now, it did have a sequel, Banjo Tooie, but I still prefer the first one. I waited years for them to make a third one, and Rare just refuses to for some reason. But that's okay, because all of the original people that made Banjo Kazooie decided to make their own company. And guess what they're making? Banjo 3. Well, they had to change the name for legal issues, but we all know it's Banjo 3. It's called Yooka-Laylee, and it should be out early next year. And if you want to see some gameplay on that when it comes out, feel free to come over to our Twitch channel, where we're going to be playing the entire game through, because holy crap, Banjo 3 is finally happening. Oh, and Grant Kirkhope is making some of the music. Anyway, Banjo Kazooie is incredible. Stop what you're doing and go play it. Well, there you go. There's the best of Rare's games. I realize that you may have a different opinion from me, and that's good. Tell me what your favorites are. I want new stuff to play on my Twitch channel. Either way, if you like the video, do the stuff. Like and subscribe and yeah. And show your friends so they can yell at me for not including their favorite game. Oh, and don't forget, we do stream games daily over on our Twitch channel, so come hang out with us. You can find a link in the description below. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you on the next list.